Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, broadcast from Cressa in Tysons, Virginia. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Tom McBride, Cressa, Daniel Cohen-Demani, Witham Smith & Brown, and Peter Schwartz-Vistage. And we'd like to introduce to you today as guests Patricia Koopersmith, founder and CEO of Rockwood Company, followed by Johnnie White, CEO of American Society of Appraisers, Tami, Howie, partner at DLA Piper, and Susan Apgood, CEO of News Generation. Let's get to know our first guest, Patricia Koopersmith, founder and CEO of Rockwood Company. Patricia, what is Rockwood Company? What are you guys doing?
Rockwood Company is a management consulting firm. We specialize in helping organizations to design and execute flexible strategies in really complex environments.
Where are you from originally?
I am from Washington, D.C.
How many brothers and sisters?
I am the middle of 5 children.
What was going on at the community pool when you were a kid?
Sure. I grew up in this area, and right next to us was a community pool. My brothers and I would go at 7:30 in the morning every day in the summer and pretty much not return home until dinner time.
So what was going on at the community pool? What was your role in it?
I ruled the pool.
What do you mean you ruled the pool?
Well, I kind of helped organize activities, bossed the other kids around, figured out, are we playing sharks and minnows or building forts or going on bike races or catching frogs?
Wait. It seems to me that you were creating ideas and collecting ideas, and then you were pulling the other kids around it. How many other kids were there at this neighborhood pool?
Dozens.
And these ideas, were they always your own ideas? Were they innovative ideas? Or were they sometimes other people's ideas?
Both, or all of the above. I think sometimes I pulled other people.
So it didn't matter whether it was your idea or somebody else's idea. It was basically you were really... How young were you when you were doing this?
Oh, from the time I was probably 6.
From the time you were about 6 years old, you're pulling other people around ideas, whether they're your ideas or other ideas. What's that have to do with what you do for a living nowadays?
That is exactly what I do for a living.
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
So we help organizations basically pull out of their workforce ideas or subject matter expertise and help them kind of form a unified and aligned vision, strategy, and then
just wanted to make sure I understood. Tom?
So it sounds like you had a really fun, sort of carefree childhood. What did Mom do and what did Dad do?
So my mother was a stay-at-home mom until my parents got a divorce. My dad was a pediatrician.
So, how old were you when your parents got divorced?
I was about 12 or 13.
Okay. So that's obviously a life-changing sort of traumatic event at the time. How did you maneuver that?
What happened to you?
How did you maneuver it then?
So certainly your life changes. We moved and moved into a smaller house. The budget was significantly cut. I think my mother really hammered into me at that point. She had actually never graduated college. She was supposed to, but got married and then started having kids. And so she was left in a really bad spot and had to work for the family business as an accountant afterwards, and it was just tight. And so she really hammered into me that you can never let yourself get in that position. You have to get your education, but you also have to get a career such that you can always stand on your own.
So your mom hammered into you, had to go sit on your... How'd you get a job with this company?
Well, I own this company. I founded it.
Oh, so really your mom really created independence in you, which is the reason you started this business.
Absolutely.
I understand. Okay. All right. Daniel, what are you thinking?
So being the middle of a large family with 5 siblings, how did that relate to what you do today?
So, one, you have to learn how to work with very different personalities. Number 2, I would say a sense of fearlessness, because I was between 2 boys, and, you just have to be tough. You have to be able to hang with them, but also, wrestle or whatever you need to do and not whine about it.
Tell me, did your grandfather have any effect on your life?
Yes, my mother's father was a huge influence on me.
How did he influence you? What did he do to you?
Sure. He was an immigrant.
From where?
From Greece.
Where'd the company name come from?
So the company name, I actually bought his house after he passed away from the estate. And
you bought his house. Why'd you buy his house?
I bought his, I had a lot of great memories, but he was my hero.
Why was he your hero?
My grandfather, basically his dad died when he was 16, and he had to step up and be the man of the house. He had 3 jobs, worked his way. He ended up building a great real estate empire, but he also gave back to the community.
Wait. So he was your hero because of what?
Because of his work ethic, because of his tenacity, because of his positive attitude, and because he cared about every person down from, the lowest level person in the company to the highest.
Didn't you also tell us he was like the unofficial mayor of the town or something like that?
So, yes, back in the 60s, there was no mayor of D.C., so my grandfather was the president of the Board of Trade, and effectively I have pictures with him with every president during that era, and he really helped make decisions with the presidents about the D.C. community.
How do you think all that affected you?
Well, I think understanding the importance of being part of the community that you're in, not just making money and employing people, but also
sounds to me like
giving
it's
back.
Really important for you to be proud of what you do.
Absolutely.
What do you mean?
Well, it motivates you. You want to be thinking about, that you are making an impact on this world.
I thought business was slimy and all that other kinds of stuff. It doesn't sound like that's the way you are, though.
No, I care about outcomes. When I wake up in the morning, I want to be able to say, wow, I'm so excited to go to work today because I know I'm going to make an impact on this world.
I just wanted to make sure I understood, Peter.
Because of your grandfather, I lead this way. Finish that statement.
I lead in a way with integrity, with focus, and I care care a lot about the people, and I also always know I can get it done. He had a sign on his desk that said, "It can't," with the apostrophe T crossed off, "be done." And I actually have one on my desk now. Everything can be done if you focus and you care.
So what do you enjoy about your life?
I get the privilege of helping organizations to really reach into their workforce and pull out the brilliant ideas, the subject matter expertise of people, and then not only to help the organization achieve those outcomes that they're striving for, but actually along the way help the leaders to become better at leading people, better at
Well, you are all positive. Wait, let me ask you a question. How young were you when you started making money?
Oh, I mean, I was selling funny little bottles of stinky water as a joke when I was 5, but I was babysitting a lot when I was 10.
Who were you babysitting?
Everybody in the neighborhood.
What were you doing different than the other babysitters?
I have a sister that's 10 years younger than me, and I basically took over. I everything from
I understand
changing.
you did that at the pool, and you did it when Mom and Dad got divorced. Is your middle name Constant Improvement?
I do love, I never can walk by something. If I see something's broken or not working well, I'm going to look into it and I'm going to say, hey,
but
how can that be done?
It's not constant improvement with the idea to hurt somebody. It's like you want everybody to win with you.
Absolutely.
So you want everybody to win with you, and you constantly want to improve. That's one of the reasons you and your firm are hired by your clients to help constantly improve their businesses. By really helping dig into their teams and find the expertise and the talent.
Right, and I think the attitude we bring as well, a positive attitude where they can see possibility that they've been beaten down in the past potentially, and now they can see, we help them also see that it can be done, and it might not be the exact way they thought it would, but we can get there.
That comes from your grandfather, that it can be done.
Right.
What do you mean?
No matter what, you will achieve that outcome.
You bring your grandfather's philosophy to the team members of your clients, don't you?
Absolutely.
What's the best part of your day?
So many great parts. Again, love working with people who I can help them see their own potential.
Are you married or single?
I am married to my high school sweetheart.
Do you have any kids?
I have 2 boys.
Similarity between being a mom and being the CEO of Rockwood Company.
Well, 1, you have to listen, and 2, you really have to care and work hard.
What have you learned from your boys that's helped you become a better CEO?
That's a great question.
I'm supposed to ask the good questions. Not that many of them.
Probably to question maybe what I was taught as we were younger. Mm-hmm. The generation now, they just operate differently. I feel like their brains...
One last question. At home, who wears the pants in the family, you or your husband?
We are such a great partnership.
What would he tell me?
He would tell you the same thing. We really are a team. There are weeks that I have really tough weeks at work.
All right. I just wanted to make sure I understood, who was really in charge of it. What's the website address of the Rockwood Company?
It's rockwoodcompany.com.
Let me have that one more time.
rockwoodcompany.com.
We've been speaking with Patricia Koopersmith, founder and CEO of Rockwood Company, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we'll be back in a moment right after this Business Spotlight. Want help building your business with help from this show's CEOs? Our CEOs can help you uncover more opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that. They've succeeded in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars, and some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. The same CEOs you've heard on the show for 10 years may be willing to help you build your business, uncover new opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that, succeeding in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars. And some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Johnnie White, CEO of American Society of Appraisers. Johnnie, what is the American Society of Appraisers?
It's a not-for-profit organization that have members all over the world, approximately about 6,000 of them.
Wow. Where are you from originally?
Washington, D.C.
And how many brothers and sisters?
I am the oldest of 3.
All right. 8 to 14, what was going on with you?
8 to 14, I was a nerd. I was always into technology. That was my thing.
How about sports? What kind of sports were you playing?
Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to play sports.
How come you didn't have the opportunity to play in sports?
My parents had divorced when I was around 8 years old, so I immediately became the leader of the family, so I didn't have the time to go play sports.
When you say you became the leader of the family when your parents got divorced, who'd you go live with, mom or dad?
Living with my mom.
Uh-huh. Were you told to become the leader, or did you assume the role?
I assumed the role.
Why?
Because I saw my mother was struggling. She had to work, and unfortunately, the hours of her working was late.
How old were you when you made that decision?
At 8.
So what's it like for an 8-year-old to take over the leadership of a family?
It's hard because you stop being a kid and you become an adult pretty quickly. So I had to figure out how to support my mother from a financial standpoint.
Wait. You're 8 years old. You're trying to figure out how to support your mother?
Yes, I was.
Tell us about that. What do you mean?
I felt that we weren't making, or she wasn't making enough money to support all the things that we require as kids. So I took it upon myself to do odd-end jobs, working at a grocery store, being a bag person, to having my own
I got a question.
paper route.
How did this sense of deep responsibility, how's that playing out nowadays in your role as the CEO of the American Society of Appraisers?
I think it plays a huge role in that, and that is that in this organization, you have become a leader. I am the leader, and same as I was as a kid, I have staff and I have members that I have to take care of.
Good, Tom. What do you think?
So that's a obviously traumatic type of event. You obviously you've got 2 siblings. What's the leadership trait that you take away from that experience that you bring with you to work as a CEO of the association?
Well, my brother and sisters, they were totally opposite individuals, so it was a lot of conflict management that I had to do, and I find I have to do that today. And an organization when you have 6,000 members, there's a lot of personalities, and I find myself doing a lot of conflict management. Each of them are my own kids.
And you were complaining a lot, right, to your brothers and sisters at the time that you had to take on this leadership role, and they were hearing you complain a lot about it.
Interesting. I did not complain. No, I didn't complain. I feel as a leader, you should not let them see you sweat. So I was in that type of role. I didn't have my siblings see when things were not good or things were,
Daniel?
bad.
What are you thinking, Daniel?
So, Johnny, you were a nerd at a very young age, and I'm curious, how did you get money to get a computer that young?
Well, first of all, let's talk about that computer. It wasn't a fully equipped computer. I was able to take parts and build a computer. So, taking these odded-in jobs, using the mainframe, the CRT, the keyboard and stuff, and put it together. So that's how I was able to put that together.
How does playing with computer at a young age influence your career forward and relates to who you are today?
It's all about innovation. For me, I wanted to build the next best thing from a computer standpoint. So as you look throughout my career, as I go into an organization, I'm trying to figure out the best way to incorporate innovation to make the organization better.
Peter?
Well, leadership isn't just about making sure everybody gets along. How do you go about making the tough decisions?
Well, that's a hard one. You have to live with those decisions. Not everyone's going to be happy. I unfortunately have to deal with that every day with the organization I'm with because we have different types of backgrounds, different types of personalities. But it all falls back to you want to make a decision that's going to be best for the entire organization, and that's kind of how I look at it.
I understand that as a kid you didn't have time to do sports because you were taking care of the family because mom and dad were divorced when you were 8. And I'm wondering if you have time for sports nowadays.
Oh, yeah. I love sports. I love to attend sporting events, and I love to play sports.
What kind of sports?
I play basketball, golf,
What's your role with this basketball stuff nowadays?
Yeah, so, the last 5 years, I got into this league, and I built a team. I recruited individuals that I know in the industry and said, hey,
you
come
built
play
a team.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? You're always involved with building teams. It sounds like your brother and sister, this organization of appraisers, now a basketball team. What's your role on the basketball team? What position do you play?
I play the point guard.
What's the personality trait you bring to playing point guard?
It's that supportive trait. As a point guard, you're leading the team, and you're giving the ball to those that, is going to be able to make that shot, or you take it upon yourself and make the shot.
Is there a parallel between that and being, it says here you're the CEO of the American Society of Appraisers and being a point guard?
Absolutely.
What's the similarity?
You have to know when to be a leader and when to allow others to be leaders, and that's what I'm doing within the organization. There's expertise that's within this organization, and there are times where we need those expertise. I'm allowing them to be the leader. Same thing with a point guard. I'm going down the court, and I got a guy on me. I'm going to try to find that guy that's open. I'm giving him the opportunity to be leader at that point.
So I understand that you had you really put your nose at a grindstone when you were a kid, and nowadays you're the head of this association. It sounds to me like you got a pretty good self-esteem. You don't need to take all the credit. Where'd that come from?
That really came from my mom. She's a very passionate person, but she wasn't the type that always would want to be in front and center. Again, I think taking that same philosophy, when to be leader and not be a leader, and that's what I take to this organization.
So your mom knew when to step out front. She knew when. So that's interesting. You learned that from your mom.
Yeah.
What's the anchor that you have in your life for getting through these challenges and the adversity that you've had?
I would say it's my own family. I have 2 kids, a son and a daughter, and my wife. I think that's been my anchor to keep me going.
And talk to me about, you got a full life. you've got this new free time to do some more sports that you didn't get to do as a kid. You're running this association. You got a family. Time management is obviously a critical component of how you get through the day, I assume. For those who can't see, because you're listening on the radio, you're wearing 2 watches. Is that inform how you maneuver your day?
Somewhat. I do have 2 watches. I call one a timepiece because I love watches, and then I call the other technology and innovation part of me. And I use the timepiece to tell time, and I use my smartwatch to keep up with all the technology.
When you were a little kid, did you have a watch?
No, I did not have a watch when I was a kid. When
did you know you wanted a watch? How young were you?
Actually, it was when I was probably in the about 19 years old.
What's that watch? What do the 2 watches represent to you?
My timepiece represents success. My smartwatch represents who I am as a nerd.
Tell us a little bit about Dad.
In terms of?
Your relationship to him, how he shaped you.
I'm sorry, what?
How he shaped you.
Who?
Your dad.
Oh, my dad. My dad is actually a gentleman that has a great personality. Everyone likes him. Everyone wants to be his friend. And I saw that as a person I wanted to be, too. I wanted to have a personality that's contagious. And I would say that I've taken that from my father.
Great. When you applied for this gig as the CEO of the American Society of Appraisers, you told us about what happened in the interview. Would you repeat that, please?
Sure. So I went through the recruitment process for this organization, and I think what really stood out amongst all the candidates was my personality. They were very, very comfortable talking to me, working with me, and they thought that my personality would be perfect for all the different type of members that we have with the organization.
Mm-hmm. If the 10-year-old version of you was sitting across the mic from you, what would you tell him right now?
It's going to be tough, but you're going to make it.
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
It's being a nerd. It was rough back then as a kid. You weren't, I didn't get the opportunity to do all the different sports stuff. I didn't get picked a lot of times on a lot of those teams. I didn't get the prettiest girl. So as time went on, it was rough going through those times.
What's the website address, the American Society of Appraisers?
It is appraiser.org.
Let me have that one more time.
Appraisers.org.
You've been speaking with Johnnie White, CEO of American Society of Appraisers, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders, and we will be back in a moment right after this break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Tami Howie, partner at DLA Piper. Tami, what is DLA Piper? What are you guys doing?
We're a full-service law firm that's worldwide, and I particularly represent startup companies in the bio and tech space. Startup companies in the bio and tech space.
Okay. Where are you from originally?
Bryantown, Maryland.
Maryland. And how many brothers and sisters?
I'm the youngest of 3.
The youngest of 3. And what was going on with you 8 to 14 years old?
Well, I had a perfect brother and a perfect sister, so I was trying to find my way to shine.
Ah, I see. Okay, all right. There was a lot of competition when you were a kid.
Yes.
Uh-huh. All right. Peter, what do you think?
Well, why shine? Why not just be good enough?
Because I'm extremely competitive, and my brother was the perfect sports hero, and my sister was the beauty queen and theater queen. So I had to find my role, and so I realized I was pretty smart. And while I did theater and sports, I was never going to win, so I decided I would focus on being the smartest kid in the family.
And then how did that start to play out in other areas of your life?
Well, I had to win at everything I did, so I would always look for a hole, and that's carried through all the way to my career. So even at my law firm, I would, when I came into the law firm, I got a choice of what practice group to go into, and everybody was going into venture capital at the time. So I decided to go into the startup world and really help them from the beginning up until financing. So I've always looked for a hole and an easy way to shine.
Tell us about Mom and Dad.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she later went into helping special ed students. And my dad was a Washington Post distributor who also did public service projects in the community.
Well, say more about the public service aspect. Were you involved in that?
I was. So my dad was the chairman of the Board of Parks and Rec for our county, and he decided that he wanted to be the pre-release prison coach. So he would go to the prison and coach their basketball team, and he would make sure I was there to help out, and I was the scorekeeper since I was good at math.
So you were watching prisoners.
Oh, I knew them all. I knew their names. I knew what they did. My dad made sure that I understood what they did, number one, so I wouldn't do it, and number two, to show that people can change and they can become better people, and I really felt close to them.
Was there one in particular that stood out that you could talk about?
Yes, there was one guy who was named Slick Hands, and he was the best basketball player. He also stole cars growing up, but not because he needed to steal the cars, because he was supporting his family, because his dad had left and his mom was ill, and that was the only way he could get money. And he was one of the greatest people I ever met.
What did that do to you? How did that affect you? How did he affect you?
It made me give people a second chance and made me ask why, and made me, forever, I've been in the public service. I volunteer on boards, and I help the underprivileged, and I help people get jobs.
What's that have to do with your legal practice, with helping these startups?
Well, I obviously could have done anything. I could have worked for Marriott, being at DLA Piper, or small companies, and I realized that the ones I could help the most and make the biggest impact with were people that were trying to get a business started in a really tough environment to raise money.
Thomas?
It sounds like earlier in the green room we talked a lot about your youth and your competitiveness with your siblings. Where do you think that came from?
Well, I think that it came from my father, because he was very competitive. He was my softball coach, and it was ingrained in me. And I may have just been born with it, because it's been about everything.
As a kid, what were your Sunday night? Did you have a family dinner routine around a table, anything like that?
So Sunday for us was football. There was no deviation. We were Redskins fans, and we would wake up in the morning and start making our snacks, and then the only time we could eat was halftime of the 4 o'clock game.
Yeah, but where would you get these lessons from your dad about the prisoners and getting people a second chance and sort of these life lessons? Where did that often occur?
Well, he worked a lot, and he worked at night, the night shift, because that's where he could make the most money, and I would do ride-alongs with him at night from 1 in the morning to 5 in the morning, and then go to school.
And what would your mom say when you were out on the car from 1 to 5?
Well, my dad and I are stubborn, so there was nothing to say, because we were going to do what we wanted to do.
You were 1 to 5 in the morning. You were doing what with your father?
He was a Washington Post distributor, and he would deliver bundles of papers to the carriers and to the stores. And he had this huge personality, and I loved to go because everybody loved him. So I'd get free donuts at Mr. Donut, and I'd get free Slurpees at 7-Eleven.
And you'd learn a lot.
And I'd get to spend time with him.
How young were you when you were doing this?
I started at about 8. And actually, I ran my own routes in high school because my dad had a back injury and there was no replacement. So somebody in the family.
How's delivering? How's doing that delivery at 1 to 5 in the morning, starting at the age of 8? How's that affecting you nowadays? What's that have to do with who you are?
It has been amazing for me because I have a work ethic that is non-stoppable. So when I was young associate and working public offerings and would have to stay up for 3 days in a row, I was the only one that could do it because there is just no way that the deal just can't get done. Just like the papers had to be delivered, because if not, our family would not survive.
Daniel?
Tell us about playing softball at a young age. What position did you play?
Well, I decided to play softball because I was a nerd, and I realized nobody thought that was cool. So I tried to cover that up by having other activities. So I went into sports and played catcher because nobody else wanted to play catcher because girls didn't want to get dirty. And I found I didn't have to work as hard to shine there.
So why catcher?
First of all, I got to be involved in everything. I get to control the situation. Some say I might be a teeny bit of a control freak, and I got to call all the plays and decide what pitches were being thrown.
I understand you were a singer too. What did you do different there?
Well, again, I'm the second best in my family at that. My sister is an amazing singer and still is. So I had to do a different genre, and she was Broadway queen. So I decided to go into gospel and realized that I was pretty good at that and could be the best in the family if I did that.
You make it sound so easy. Certainly there had to be a failure along the way that you'd love to tell us about.
Well, I work really hard. I have a lot of failures, but I don't tell anybody when I do things that fail, so that's one of my secrets. But I think I have ADHD, and I know I have OCD, so I work really hard until I get better at it. But my big fail was the flute. I just couldn't get it, and my sister was great at that, and I tried to do that, and I just couldn't get it to work.
So it sounds like there's been a lot of success in your life. Your family's obviously talented. One thing I was wondering is, what scares you?
What scares me is losing my family, because they are my rock. I have an amazing husband who's a general counsel of a tech company and often disagrees with me, and that's good for me. And I have 3 amazing kids that are just my rock, and no matter what my day's like, I come home and they're there for me.
And at work, as an attorney, what scares you?
Nothing, because I know I can conquer it if I just work hard enough.
So you have 3 kids, and what have you learned from your kids about being an attorney, a good attorney?
Negotiation skills, because they all challenge me every single day and disagree with everything that I do. And they've definitely let me know that I am not as smart as I think I am. So they've been very helpful to let me know that, especially in the tech world. They've let me know that I might know the words around the technology, but I know nothing about technology.
I wrote down the word theater. Why is theater down on my piece of paper about you?
I lost theater early on in my life so that I could be really great at my career. And now that I'm pretty good at my job, I've come back to it in the last few years. So I do theater with my daughter now. And most recently, I was Velma Von Tussle in Rockville Music Theater Company this summer.
What do you enjoy about acting?
It comes very easy. It's the one piece I don't have to work at. I just open my mouth and the music comes out, and I get to be a different person. I don't have to be in charge. I don't have to be super nice, and I don't have to be super smart. I can be the role and be a very different person.
Mm-hmm. So how young were you when you decided you wanted to be an attorney?
Probably birth, but I can remember my earliest negotiations at 5 on the playground, negotiating to get a better swing or negotiating with people to get on the better kickball team, and I was pretty good at it.
Were you negotiating with mom or dad?
I never had to negotiate with mom because she was the sweetest person ever, but dad and I butted heads a lot, and he was a great rival.
So he sharpened your swords.
Yeah, it sounds to me like he really enjoyed the relationship with you, taking you to the prison, taking you on, at 1 o'clock in the morning to do these deliveries.
Well, I always said he wanted another boy, and I definitely was his boy, so I did everything with him. We went to football games. I was at a lot of the Redskins winning games, and we had a great time together. How's being your dad's son, how's that affecting your legal career nowadays? How's that help you? How's that help your clients? Well, the corporate legal world is very male-dominated, and I just believe I'm one of them. So there's no differentiator there. And in the finance world, because that's a lot of what I do, it's mostly men. And I probably know more about sports than they do. I often win the fantasy football league games that we play. So, what's the website address for DLA Piper? DLApiper.com. We've been speaking with Tami Howie, who's a partner at DLA Piper here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our Executive Leaders Radio, it's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we'll be back in a moment right after this break. Want help building your business with help from this show's CEOs? Our CEOs can help you uncover more opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that. They've succeeded in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars, and some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. The same CEOs you've heard on the show for 10 years may be willing to help you build your business, uncover new opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that, succeeding in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars. And some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com.
back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Susan Apgood, CEO of News Generation. Susan, what is News Generation? What are you guys doing?
News Generation is a media relations company that focuses on getting our clients on radio and television to tell their stories.
Oh, interesting. And where are you from originally?
I'm from South Orange, New Jersey.
South Orange, New Jersey. How many brothers and sisters?
I'm the youngest of three.
Youngest of three, South Orange, New Jersey. And what were you doing like 8 to 14-ish?
At age 8, I did start a magazine that I wrote articles for, had my friends write articles for, and then I sold it throughout the neighborhood.
Hold on a second. You're 8 years old, and I can understand mowing lawns, babysitting. You started a magazine. So give us the functions that were involved in starting this magazine.
I had a couple friends that I knew from school who wrote articles. My brother loved to ride motocross bikes, so he was my distributor. And my dad would make copies of the magazine at his office, and I would put them together and color them and staple them, and my brother would go off and sell them for a quarter.
So you're a natural organizer, a natural understander of where everybody fits, and a natural organizer of those talents starting at the age of 8,
Correct.
Aren't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not everybody at 8 years old is thinking of starting a magazine.
Right.
What is
That's
it
true.
about you that had to do that?
I think we just were talking one day and found a need. We had a ton of kids in our neighborhood, and we thought it would be fun to be able to share stories about our families and what was happening at the local pool. And
Who's we?
just the neighborhood kids. There were lots of large families in the town where I grew up.
What was your role with the neighborhood kids?
I presume the role of the oldest child, even though I am the youngest, and I think I was just sort of born a leader, and people would look to me on what to do next, and that was sort of one of the things that came up.
You're coming up with ideas and organizing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yes.
What'd you do with the money you made?
I remember about a red bike that was a Schwinn with a white banana seat that later got stolen.
Oh,
but I'm a saver, too. I've always been a
that's
saver.
what I figured. Thomas?
So talk to us earlier. You had mentioned that you come from a large family. You have a lot of cousins. How many cousins?
I have 22 first cousins on my dad's side.
And locally in New Jersey?
They just about all live in New Jersey.
And so what was that like coming from such a large family?
Well, it was mostly, because I'm the fourth of the 22, it was mostly the presumption about my dad's family, him being the oldest of 10, of which I had uncles and aunts that were 15, 17 years older than me. So it was more that connection.
What was your reputation amongst your cousins?
I was definitely an organizer. I was definitely, I was very nerdy when I was young. I was a pleaser, wanted to get everything right. And so I think that...
Is there a similarity between your reputation amongst your cousins and what you do for a living nowadays?
I think so.
What's the similarity?
For example, we're having a party this weekend, and I have organized everything. There are 14 girl cousins.
Is there a similarity between starting the magazine and what you're doing nowadays?
Yes, keeping cash flow going, keeping things organized, keeping people engaged.
Daniel?
What did Mom do for a living?
So my mom stayed at home when I was young and then got her business degree when I was in 6th grade. And at the time, she bought and sold magazines, and she ran a couple of old folks' homes.
What did you bring from what your mom did into who you are today in your business?
My mom is extremely calm. She is a problem solver. She's very creative, and people love being around her.
How about Dad?
My dad worked at the same career, his entire career. He was an attorney. He worked for our local county, and then he worked for the Attorney General until he retired about 20 years ago at age 57.
Any quality from your dad that you bring today?
My dad is fiercely loyal to his family.
Loyal. Tell us more. Loyalty in business.
Loyalty. He remembers where he came from, and people that do good, strong things around him, he will always remember that, and he will always show allegiance to those people, and I'm exactly the same way.
So I understand you were also a gymnast growing up.
I was.
Talk to us about that.
I was a competitive gymnast from about the age of 10 to 17, and I was the New Jersey State champion on balance beam when I was 12 years old. And being a gymnast, I had to be very focused with my time. My resources were limited in terms of time, so I had to make sure I could get my homework in,
and
get my social life in.
What's the connection between inches away from splitting your head wide open and running a business?
Well, I think it's just that focus on the end score, the end goal, making sure that you're doing everything right along the way, practicing as much as you can so that when it comes time to compete, you can hit it out of the park.
And I bet you've had more than one perfect dismount. What's that feel like?
It's amazing. When I landed and won the state championship, I knew it, my coaches knew it, and it was one of the most thrilling moments of my life.
Thomas?
What are the challenges of coming from a large family that has a reputation in the town?
Oh, yeah, good question.
I think standing out, showing that you are different than everybody in your family. When I was 16, I had the privilege of coming here to Washington to be a page for my local congressman, and that was something that definitely made me stand out.
Is there a messaging issue when you've got that big group of cousins in the town that informs the work that you do? That you learned at an early age?
I think it is. I think
how insightful, Thomas.
Being together at big family dinners when I was a kid, just competing for time to tell a story. So you had to be quick, you had to be funny, you have to be engaging, and you'd have to eat fast so you could get food before everybody else did.
That's very insightful, Thomas, especially for real estate.
I'll come back.
So, Susan, so you had a bunch of cousins, and so you felt earlier. Peter asked you, did you feel an obligation because of the family name?
I did. I mean, even just with my siblings who are 1 and 2 years older than I am, I'm very different from my sister. She is an amazing person, but we just have very different ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. So I would walk into class and they would say, "Oh, you're a Matthews." They knew who my siblings were. And so I felt like I was always trying to correct what my brother and sister had done.
That's the messaging thing that Tom was talking about earlier. Isn't that what you do for a living? Create messages and make sure that they get published?
It is. My job is to be a connector between people that have great stories to tell and then providing them with the medium in which to tell it. So
you're trying to figure out how to craft everyone's message like you had to do for yourself and then how to get it out there.
Correct. And make sure that people are listening.
And you've been doing this since you were like 8 years old with this magazine you started.
Correct. And I started my company when I was 27. So I've been at it a while.
Why'd you start your own business? Why'd you go to work for somebody?
I was just finishing my MBA, and I had a client that came to me and said, "I know you're going to get a job and leave this agency, but you should really start your own company. And if it doesn't work, then you can get a job in 6 months at a firm that you always wanted to work at. But give us a chance. Let us work together." And actually, that client was Microsoft, and it was in 1997. Mm-hmm. So it was a huge tech.
Yeah, and you're running your own business when you were 8 years old with the magazine. I mean, you understood about a bunch of moving pieces.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest obstacle you ever overcame?
The biggest obstacle ever was my company was audited for its 401k plan. About 10 years into my business, I had a 10-month-old at home, and I was pregnant with twins, and I got an audit that was the darkest time of my life.
Mm-hmm. How'd it come out?
It came out fine because I actually didn't do anything wrong, but the message is I felt like a criminal, and I realized, I don't know what it was, but I felt like I must have done something wrong because why would they audit me? I did not. And I wrote a letter to the commissioner of the IRS and said, "I am a mom, I'm a woman-owned business, pregnant with twins. if I don't get this resolved, I'm going to call the Today Show and Good Morning America, and I will go on camera with my children and tell them this story. And the next day, I got a notice that said that they would settle if I just paid $5,000 for some fee. But the initial notice I got from them said that I had done all these things wrong and there was a possibility of going to jail.
Good for you. It sounds to me like that you understood what's right and what's wrong, and you hadn't done anything wrong.
Correct.
And that you're also very good at messaging, fortunately.
Right.
What's the website address of News Generation?
NewsGeneration.com.
NewsGeneration.com. We've been speaking with Susan Apgood, CEO of News Generation here on Executive Leaders Radio, as well as we've had the opportunity of speaking with Patricia Koopersmith, founder and CEO of Rockwood Company. What's the website address of Rockwood Company one more time?
RockwoodCompany.com.
And we also had this opportunity of speaking with Johnnie White, CEO of American Society of Appraisers, and I believe the website address of that is appraisers.org. Tami, Howie, partner of DLA Piper. It's dlapiper.com. And Susan, your website address again is?
NewsGeneration.com.
Susan Apgood, CEO of News Generation. I'd like to thank my co-hosts, including Tom McBride, the insightful Tom McBride from Cressa, Daniel Cohen-Dumani from Witham, Smith & Brown, and Peter Schwartz Vistage for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.